Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we conclude with part 8 of the Historical Jesus and Mythical Christ, a lecture by Gerald Massey. Gerald Massey as an evolutionist. The Natural Genesis by Gerald Massey, 2 volumes, page 552 and 555. London, Williams and Norgate. This is the second part of a voluminous work undertaken by Mr. Massey for the purpose of establishing a theory which certainly should have a sober examination. He holds that the origins of the myths and mysteries, types and symbols, religions and languages are to be found in Africa alone, and that Egypt is the mouthpiece. Proceeding on the evolutionary hypothesis, he seeks to demonstrate, to quote his own words, the Kamite origin of the pre-Aryan matter extant in language and mythology found in the British Isles, the origin of the Hebrew and Christian theology in the mythology of Egypt, the unity of origin for all mythology, and the Kamite origin of that unity, the common origin of the mythical Genitrix and her brood of 7 elementary forces, found in Egypt, Akkad, India, Britain, and New Zealand, who became kronotypes in their secondary and spirits or gods in their final psychotheistic phase. The Egyptian genesis of the chief celestial signs, zodiacal and extra-zodiacal, the origin of all mythology in Kamite typology, the origin of typology in gesture signs, and the origin of the language in African onomatopoeia. It is clear that if on the one hand this is a sufficiently audacious and ambitious concept, on the other hand it is a perfectly legitimate enterprise, and one of the implications of which may be most important, the author deliberately undertakes to prove all Christendom the dupes of sweeping and long-sustained delusions. He challenges scientists, theologists, philologists, anthropologists, sociologists, but he proceeds upon methods the soundest of which no evolutionist at least can question. And since he presents to his readers all the testimony upon which his conclusions rest, it is not difficult to check him as he goes on, and to ascertain how far, if at all, he is making unwarrantable deductions. The volumes represent an immense amount of labor and research. Mr. Massey has evidently sought conscientiously to exhaust the field in regard to justification for his views. The abundance of his evidence, indeed, will have the effect of delaying the comprehension of his purpose, inasmuch as the ordinary reader will soon become lost in the mass of details and, bewildered by the accumulation of minute proofs, will fail to perceive the tendency, the sequence, and the significance of the argument. To the non-evolutionist, the work will probably appear either unintelligible or wantonly wicked, since it involves, among other results, the relegation of the whole system of Christianity to the realm of mythology, the very historical existence of its founder, as portrayed in our canonical Gospels, being denied, and the not altogether novel theory of the sun myth being put forward as the origin of the alleged delusion upon which the religion was based. Necessarily, however, this conclusion is overreached after a long and elaborate study of the typography and primitive language of early mankind. In these researches, it must be conceded that the author has sifted the best authorities, that he shows familiarity with a wide range of scholarship, that he has not undertaken to thrust upon the world an altogether crude theory by straining, distorting, or mutilating the evidence used on its behalf. In fact, he succeeded in bringing together a great number of illustrations whose peculiarity is that they appear quite natural, and because of the inherent accord to fortify his conclusions. The worst that can be said of any controversial work is that the theory was first invented and that the facts have been selected to fit the theory. Such a description ought to be fatal to any work of any kind, if true. But Mr. Massey is not open to that accusation so as far as we can perceive. He has questioned facts to find out what they meant, and he has endeavored to put that meaning, as it appears to him, plainly before his readers. And certainly some of his suggestions are well calculated to approve themselves to intelligent minds. The old notion that primitive man began with monotheism and gradually declined into polytheism is now exploded. There still survives a tendency to believe that primitive man was a good deal of a philosopher capable of somewhat subtle reasoning upon physical phenomena and possessing an imagination potent enough to create for himself a complete mythology. Upon this subject, Mr. Massey argues forcibly. He says, "The world of sense was not a world of symbol to the primitive or primal man. He did not begin as a Platonist. He was not the realizer of abstractions, a personifier of ideas, a perceiver of the infinite. In our gropings after the beginnings, we shall find the of religious doctrines and dogmas with the common earth or even dirt still clinging to them and showing the ground in which they grew." He deals boldly with the theory that the ancient mysteries concealed subtle and mystic teachings and occult secrets. That theory has of late been revived by some who desire to find new support for belief in a modern adaptation of these mysteries. Mr. Massey, however, does not hesitate to express the opinion that the reason why the mysteries were so carefully concealed from the masses in later times was the simple physical nature of the beginnings out of which the more abstract ideas had been gradually evolved. He holds, in fact, that the Gnosis, the Kabbalah, the esoteric evidence of all the so-called mysteries owe their origin to very simple and transparent physical allegories, that, as he puts it, the knowledge was concealed because of its primitiveness and not on the account of its profundity. Certainly, some of the partial explanations which have come down to us of the mysteries of evolutionists seems to bear out this theory. The extent to which symbolism has been employed, the natural progress made by it from its beginnings in the crudity of gesture language to its tyrannical sovereignty over partially civilized minds during long periods of time, is exhibited in a suggestive way, and with its usual wealth of illustration. Indeed, so far as the argument is concerned, Mr. Massey would, in our judgment, have done better had he curtailed the illustrative portion of his book considerably, and even now he may find it worthwhile to popularize the work by making a condensed revision of it, in which only a bare sufficiency of evidence need be given, so as not to interrupt the free and steady progress of the argument. Patience and determination are required for the perusal of such voluminous works, and the author evidently does not expect that his book will achieve a large circulation. If, however, it is read by the small minority of thinkers who, after all, give tone and tendency to the intellectual progress of the age, his aim will have been attained, and this limited range the work assuredly deserves, for it is an honest, intelligent, painstaking effort to apply the evolutionary principle to the beginning of things, and to get at the real meaning of many mysteries by ascertaining how the beliefs which men have held have grown naturally. No doubt modern ethnology is very useful in this connection, for there is no lack of examples of savage, barbarous, half-civilized, and peoples of arrested development to investigate. By the psychological growth of the modern savage, we can tell with almost certainty what was the psychological growth of our ancestors, and of the ancestors of those ancient peoples, the evidences of whose high culture have been preserved so wonderfully in the Nile Valley, and inquiries from the beginnings are becoming recognized as the only profitable ones. The school of which Mr. Herbert Spencer is the acknowledged chief and guide has proceeded mainly upon this method, though it has not always been true to itself, because perhaps it could not at once liberate itself from the influence of inherited and instilled fallacies. Mr. Massey has gone further in his research than any of his predecessors. He is justly entitled to claim, as he does in his preface, that his book is written by an evolutionist for evolutionists. unhampered by educational bias of any kind, he was enabled to start from a more advanced point than anyone who preceded him, and as a result, he has produced a work which must be characterized as the boldest and most uncompromising outcome of the evolutionary principle, carried out with an intrepid determination to arrive at the truth concerning all the subjects of the inquiry. The volumes are well printed and are furnished with an index which, however, might well be enlarged for the better convenience of those to whom the work is likely to become one of reference. New York Tribune. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.